What wedding moment made you think they are not going to last? As a wedding photographer, I have been to more than my share of weddings. It was a real shotgun wedding. Dad didn't realize it would not stand up in court. Only time the groom was more excited to have photos than the bride. She wanted a limo, he thought a hearse would be better, and kept doing Lurch impressions. From the Adams family. Her friends took turns motorboating her, females, and he said, "Get it out of your system, as after tonight you never get to do that again." Was a good sign also, when she dove into the pool with her bridesmaids at the reception, in her wedding dress. Don't know what happened, sat down with bride and groom, filling out the contract. Got the deposit. He stood up, said forget it, and walked out. 2 months later I get told the wedding is off, 3 months later she calls to rebook, different groom. Day of the wedding I am at the church, got the final payment the week before, no one shows, no one, just me and the DJ. Not the couple getting married, but the best man and maid of honor who were married to each other. Best man's speech was all about how hard it was to be married. I've been married for a year, and it feels like 100 years. Maid of honor stands up to give a speech, and just says ditto. It was so awkward, and really brought the whole room down. Brother of the bride stood up, and gave a nice impromptu speech about teamwork, and having a partner, to go through life with. How happy the family was to have the groom join their family. Best man and maid of honor were divorced within a year. Couple who got married are still married 30+ years later. I sometimes wonder, if the speeches actually were helpful in how not to act as a couple. For me the complex backstory. Bride's brother is gay, and has been in a long-term relationship for 40+ years. At the time he gave his speech about marriage he couldn't marry the man he loved, and I think his passionate defense of marriage was born from that. When people would say they were against gay marriage, because it makes a mockery of marriage, I'd think of that night. The married couple who had no respect for marriage could easily marry, and did over and over again, and the man who stood up and defended marriage could not. He's married now and lovingly takes care of his husband as he battles health issues. Source: My wedding. We'll start 3 days before. The wedding was a Ren Fair-style wedding outside at a large gazebo, and the maid of honor had promised to purchase a stylized dress for my bride that they had agreed on. 3 days before the wedding she calls to tell us she had no money, and was embarrassed to admit it, so we literally hand-sewed on together in 24 hours. It turned out pretty nice for what we had. Bride's mother was supposed to pick up the cake in ATX, and drive an hour south for the wedding. She left her house 30 minutes before the wedding to pick it up. When she finally showed up hour late, the cake was destroyed. She put it in the back seat and drove like hell all the way down, just slamming it against box with every turn. During the 1-hour delay, there was almost a fist fight between 2 groomsmen because, well, the Mo showed up in the dress that she was unable to afford. Obvious attempt to upstage the bride. The same Mo during her speech after the ceremony started it off by saying, "When we all met, I did not like DRAKKARIM 411 at all, however I found that he grows on you like a fungus." Needless to say, my entire side of the family was super cold to all of this. Since all of these issues were on her side of friendships or families, I was told to suck it up and we'll discuss later. I sort of assumed that a lot of these friends had just shown themselves the door. Quite the opposite. In fact, 2 years later, when I accepted my first well-paying job out of college, it became an issue that it was an hour and a half out of Austin, so she decided to just stay in ATX to be with her friends. I mailed her the divorce papers, and since she couldn't be bothered to even show up to the hearing, I've never seen her again. Not at the wedding itself, but I used to work at a David's bridal. Bride came in with tons of friends. We did the say yes to the dress thing, and an hour later she's standing there in $3,000 worth of stuff and doesn't have any money with her or in her account. She decides she wants to apply for the store credit card. I run it through the system, and she gets denied. She then calls the groom for his info, which, to be fair, people did all the time, and he tells her no. She threw a huge fit on the phone with him, standing on the bridal stage, literally demanding why not? Why? Like an actual child over and over again. I've never seen a 30-year-old age backwards so quickly. She was just a brat. Literally stomping her feet in front of me, all her friends, and the other bride in the store. I was impressed. At the end of all of that, she hangs up on him, and her friend is like, "I'm so sorry you can't get your dress," and the bride stops crying instantly and just goes, "Oh, I'll get the dress. I just have to do this at home, and when he gets mad enough he'll come get it for me, so I'll stop." Speechless. Sure enough. Girl came back 2 days later with her man, and he applied for the credit card and bought the dress. He was livid and silent, and she was smug as hell. Can't imagine they're having a happy marriage if they are still together. I'm witnessing one from the sidelines now. My wife's brother just got married this past May. Bride's mother is a big tea person and went a little nuts with extra flowers, table pieces, decorations, etc. Note I said extra, it was already decorated by the venue, she just took it upon herself to buy and add way more stuff. Anyway, a few weeks ago she sends my groom's mom an email with receipts of all the extra stuff she bought, $7,000 worth right parenthesis, and asked that she pay half, since it was technically set up in time for the rehearsal dinner for guests to enjoy. It's causing a huge rift between the newlyweds, since the bride is taking her mom's side. At my boyfriend's sister's wedding, the groom got drunk before the vows and smoked weed after the vows. Was cross-faded as hell and made a fool of himself. When we went up to congratulate them after, she refused to be near him or take pictures with him. It was awkward. After the speeches, basically everyone left. Family was still around and they opened gifts. Someone gifted nice champagne, and the groom tried to open it and dropped it, and it shattered. Bride stormed off screaming. Groom got upset and started cussing out the air. They still went to their honeymoon together in Florida and she got pregnant almost immediately. Maybe 7 months into her pregnancy she kicked him out because he slept with her roommate. They got divorced when their kid was 6 months old. He ended up at the emergency room between the ceremony and the reception. He went out the night before with his sister and friends and got blasted. They had to hold a cold pack to the back of his neck to keep him vertical during the wedding photos. Marriage lasted 30 days until they had a fight. She left the house and he filled the U-Haul truck with everything but her clothes. I was maid of honor. Me, best man and the couple went into a separate little room to do the signing stuff. Bride excused herself to go to the bathroom and the groom started making pretty mean remarks about her cooking, something she's passionate about, to the officiary. She came back, heard they were talking about cooking family meals together, and gave him the warmest smile, thinking he had praised her. He scoffed awkwardly and changed the topic. That always stuck with me. He wasn't laughing with her but at her, behind her back. They lasted 7 months. This one is so heartbreaking. Hope your friend is doing better now. It genuinely made me tear up. I pictured a loving, happy wife returning to hear her new husband talking about what she's passionate about. Then he laughs at her. That makes me sick, poor thing. What an absolute asshole of a husband. I've been with my wife for 10 years and, though we have our arguments, I could never gossip or shit talk about her behind her back. That's not why I wanted her in my life. I'm reminded of someone I read about maybe 20 years ago, a college professor who developed a protocol for predicting whether prospective marriages were likely to last. He had the engaged couple discuss some tender issues, topics they would fight about. They would videotape the session, then research assistants would watch the tape, counting the various interactions of note. That data produced their prediction. His research showed that fighting was not a problem as such. Lots of happy, long-lasting marriages had lots of fighting. The crucial aspect was whether the couple were mutually respectful during their fight. Observed disrespect was a very strong predictor of a short-lived marriage. I have kept that in mind when dating. If I feel like she seems to be contemptuous of me at any point, that's a massive red flag. I ended a relationship when I realized I was treating her disrespectfully. Be nicer, I would tell myself. After a while, I realized that I simply did not respect her, and that was a big problem. In the 1995 BBC, Pride and Prejudice, the dad says something like, "I can't abide you having a marriage, Lizzie, where you cannot respect your spouse, like my marriage." There are 2 ex-Mrs. Lebrowskis. They both broke my heart. I'm permanently sad that I couldn't make either marriage last. I take some joy, though, from the fact that I deeply respected both them when we got married and still do now, 37 and 15 years later. He ended up in the emergency room between the ceremony and the reception. He went out the very night before with his sister and friends and got blasted. They had to hold a cold pack to the back of his neck to keep him vertical during the wedding photos. The marriage lasted 30 days until they had a fight. She left the house and he filled the U-Haul truck with everything but her clothes. My cousin needed multiple hydration IVs to make it through his wedding. One before the ceremony, before a reception, and during, and he was still getting shit-faced throughout. Somehow, this is all okay because his buddy is a paramedic. The bachelor party and the bachelorette party were in Vegas at the same time, across the hall from each other. The bride and groom got in a huge fight on the last night of the trip, and when I was leaving, I said, "I'll see you guys at the wedding," to the groom, and he replied, "I'm not sure there's gonna be one." There was a wedding, but they were divorced within 18 months. My brother's ex-wife. Throughout the exchange of vows, she was looking at everyone but my brother, making sure all eyes were on her. Later, she instructed the photographer, a family friend who was cheap, to mingle and get shots of people being happy. Within 10 minutes, she'd summoned the photographer back shouting, "Whose wedding is this? I meant get shots of people being happy for me." Edit. Thought I'd add they broke up when she cheated on him. Apparently, that marriage she was desperate for was only good while it brought her attention. One of my friends was the best man at another friend of our wedding. His best man speech included this line: "I prepared some lines for tonight, but the groom sniffed them all in the bathroom." 3 months later, there was a divorce due to a coke problem. I hate it when couples do a joint bachelor/bachelorette party. A friend of mine got married recently, and that's exactly what happened at his bachelor party. The fiancée didn't want strippers to be involved, so she made sure the parties were at the same location on the same day to make sure. They ended up getting drunk and fighting for a few hours. The worst part is that there were several couples there, since we're a pretty tight-knit group. Several other couples also got into arguments, and I was left to get hammered and dwell on how grateful I was to be single. I never understood as strippers at bachelors or bachelorettes. My close groups of friends had 2 couples mix their bachelor and bachelorette party. One had a Saturday pub crawl. We drank the whole day and probably visited about 100 pubs in every corner of London. She didn't force me to wear any specific dress/no rules. Her to-be husband and she were having fun throughout. It was a great day. The second couple pitched in together and hired a tiny yacht for a summer mixed bachelor and bachelorette party, and we spent the first half of the day with light drinking, BBQ, swimming, playing, and ended up drinking a bit by the second half. They had hired a lifeguard and an EMT to be on standby. And the couple themselves, they were having a blast dancing and singing. The groom and best man had a dancing routine for getting into the church ceremony, and they got nearly halfway through it, and I guess the groom felt they hadn't received much applause and wows from us the attendees, and decided to go back to the entrance and start all over. Sigh, that's pretty cringeworthy. People don't seem to be enjoying this. I'd better stop and start again from the beginning. I just remember the side eyes we were all giving each other. Also, I should add the person in charge of the music was the last to figure it out, so you can imagine the weird pause after the 2 men walked back to the church entrance with the music still going on, and someone trying to tell the people at the front to start the song again. Absolute cringe. I live for these threads. Anyway, I know a photographer who was offered to shoot a wedding on the Gold Coast, Australia. If you're from Australia, then you know the Gold Coast, while beautiful, has a lot of Jersey Shore types living there. It's kind of like Miami, but no celebrities and very, very trashy. My friend is getting shots of everybody getting dressed up at the same time because the groom, groomsmen, bride and bridesmaids are all getting ready in the same room. The groom decided to have his bucks party, bachelor, stag do, the night before, so they're all hungover as shit and snorting line after line of coke, something that is making my photographer friend's job hard, because she can't get any nice shots of the groom or groomsmen without these illicit drugs in view. The energy in the room is getting uncomfortable, so the bride asks if they could take it easy on the coke and get a couple of nice photos. The groom yells "shut up, cunt," and keeps snorting. The girl who got my friend the gig said they divorced like 4 months later. Another friend of mine was pressured into marrying his girlfriend of like 8 years because she dropped an ultimatum: propose to me within a year or we're done. He does, so they get married, but of every wedding photo she posted on Facebook, neither one of them looked happy. They divorced barely a year into the marriage. When they disappeared for half an hour during the reception, they were both saving themselves for marriage and were desperate to bone down. Which is a fine thing to want. But it turns out that was more or less the main reason they got married. They made it almost a year. My high school teacher told me a story of 2 people who waited for marriage too. In Utah, they have a massive porn problem, and the husband definitely watched too much. He brought an outfit, a movie, toys, and I swear a whip for their wedding night. The wife burst into tears and locked herself in the bathroom for the entire night. My teacher's lesson was to talk to your partner about everything, including sex. Lol. There was a similar problem on an agony aunt page I read once, when the wife wrote in for advice. So apparently the bride and groom were both virgins and waited for marriage in accordance with their culture, with the groom clearly spending all that time on Pornhub getting wild expectations. The shy, religious bride expected that their wedding night would be a sacred coming together of souls, but the groom did not read the memo. He slapped her around, tried to do anal, and asked to piss on her on their wedding night. The bride was, obviously, absolutely horrified and kept making excuses not to have sex with him again. He said he had a wonderful time and kept asking when they could have round two. She wrote into the agony aunt wondering what kind of deviant she had married. I felt very sorry. Wedding photographer here, I can think of a few. Full-blown row during dinner, had another couple fist fight during a first dance. An infamous one for me was leaving a venue late one night, and as I'm walking to the train I can see the bride down an alley, on her knees with the best man. I was the wedding photographer for a reality TV show. End of the night I'm having a few drinks with the film crew, and the groom has come up to me, and one of the producers, and says I think I've made a big mistake, so we're trying to be reassuring and telling him, it's natural to second guess such a big decision, to which he replies, no, I mean I think him gay. I had them both on Facebook. The drama the next week was mesmerizing to watch unfold. I've got a ton of these stories. Edit, since you asked, was working with a video guy who had the bride and groom on radio mix. Sat around waiting for the evening action to kick off, and the video dude called me over and said, listen to this. Groom was talking to one of the bridesmaids about how they had to end their affair now he's married. Not a how could you tell they wouldn't last, but shooting in an old church on the hottest day of the year. Watching the groom wait for the bride, and he's swaying back and forth. Next thing he's fainted, fallen forward and slammed his mouth into a stone step. Smashed his front teeth out, blood everywhere. Had a bride and groom on a trampoline for photos, groom's heading downward, bride's about to go up, he lands on her dress just as she goes up, and she pops out the top of the dress, boobs flailing around in the air. Shot a traveler wedding which erupted into a massive brawl. Watched a drunk usher knock over wedding cake. Weddings are amazing. I've been doing this for about 12 years, and seen some sights. I just had a wedding I was invited to called off, because the bride-to-be found out about the affair her fiancé is having. And my first thought was, why would you even agree to get married? Do these people really think they're going to continue successfully cheating and never get caught for the rest of their lives? Do they think they'll somehow decide they'll be faithful in the future? I had a co-worker before whose fiancé informed her the week before their wedding that he never legally divorced his first wife, and he wasn't willing to do it. This was after they dropped $50K in deposits that were non-refundable. I worked at a nice restaurant in NOLA. Bride is lovely. She is excited and very receptive to our suggestions on things in their budget. Groom is an insufferable know-it-all. Hearse bargain hunting. Crab cakes don't cost that much. What if I buy them and you serve them on their big day? I'm holding the door as they walk out the first time as husband and wife. Wife. We got married. So happy. Husband. Not really. We got to fill out paperwork and file it with the state. I've seen 3-week-old balloons less deflated than that poor woman. When he raised his eyebrows and gave her a knowing look during the for richer or for poorer portion of their vows. For context, he was a newly drafted pro athlete and she was a big fan of his signing bonus. What happened? This was very recently, within the last calendar year. They're still currently married, but an injury ended his season. After the wedding, my friend's new wife, who was fairly quiet in public, was screaming at my friend's family, telling them it was the last time they would be seeing them and how terrible they were. It was hard to watch. 2 years later, my friend walked in on her and a dude. When the maid of honor professed her love for my brother during her toast at my brother's wedding, and her husband walked up to the head table, picked her up, and carried her away before she could embarrass him further. They lasted about 3 months after that. My brother and his wife, on the other hand, are still happily married 20 years. I was at the wedding of one of my mum's oldest friends, and she clearly had more fun dancing with the best man after the wedding. Long story short, they dated for a while after the divorce. At my friend's wedding after party, she came into the room and told everyone that they tried to consummate, but he couldn't because he was too drunk. Her family was very Italian, and she basically cursed him to have to deal with that for the rest of their marriage. A month before the wedding, the couple made an appointment with me, the church music director/organist, to plan music for the ceremony. Each made suggestions on music he or she would like. But no matter how many pieces were considered and demonstrated, they couldn't agree on anything, and would get into heated arguments over processionals, recessionals, vocal solos, and prelude music, even though they were all good possibilities. The bride and groom simply seemed indifferent to one another's wishes and needs. In the end, based on what I heard each of them most wanting, I offered compromises in an effort to bring about peace, selections which they finally agreed to. They were engaged, but showed no sign of being in love. Seriously. I knew a couple that's actually still together against the odds, but I got the hell away from their toxic BS, so I only know what I hear around town. Both the bride and groom were in my husband's circle of friends, and everyone was shocked when they started dating, because they both have some major flaws. It took them months to agree on the venue. He shot down everything she suggested. They had already picked the date, and they were starting to run out of options, yet she thought I was ridiculous for suggesting they postpone the wedding. I'm married and told her, if they can't even decide on this one thing, they're going to have much bigger problems. They also went entire weeks giving each other the silent treatment over things like him drinking the coffee she made for herself or her giving someone cookies, and not saving him any. I heard they separated during lockdown, but went to counseling, and got back together. When they got engaged, we joked they're both too stubborn to ever get a divorce, and it looks like we were right. It's bizarre how a couple that are not in love can rationalize. I had a similar experience, but as the groom. She asked what kind of cake I wanted. I said strawberry, it's my favorite flavor. She said no, we're getting lemon. Well, it's a tiered cake, so tiers of each flavor. Nope, she wouldn't have it. How about a strawberry lemonade cake? That sounds nice. Nope, it's lemon or nothing. In the end, we got 2 cakes. Thankfully, we found a really cheap bakery, so it wasn't expensive, but looking back I wonder why I didn't comprehend what her lack of compromise would end up meaning, that she wanted to mooch off my paycheck and benefits, while fucking a dude on the side. Edit, just as a quick aside, because I want this to be said. If you are close to the happy couple, and you see warning signs, say something. I don't know why it's taboo to question the couple's decision, but I speak as a victim of a terrible relationship and divorce. I am extremely upset with my close friends and family who are only just now telling me, oh yeah, I saw those signs a long time ago, but I figured well he's happy, so I won't say anything. Literally only my mother voiced concerns, and I brushed those off as overprotective mama bear comments. Little did I know she's one of the most perceptive people I know. The new husband grabbed my backside. Wife was apparently also cheating. Divorced a few months later. They later cheated on their new partners with... I used to work for an event center that hosted a lot of weddings pre-COVID. After one ceremony I saw the groom slap the butt of one of the bridesmaids in the hallway. She laughed and with a big smile said, "Oh Jeremy, you'll never change." That was my thinking at my own wedding. I had no control over it, it was all his family. Had the reception at the local fairgrounds. Fried chicken and corn on the cob for the meal. Husband chewed me out that there would be no music and absolutely no dancing because he refused to dance. Mother-in-law and sister-in-law ordered 6 cases of cheap champagne and got pissed when no one would drink it, including me. They literally could not give it away. The after party, as the reception was like 2 hours, for lunch, was at the Mills. The husband promised as a wedding gift that he was officially done smoking. He had his entire family form a circle around him, so he could quickly try to smoke a whole pack, blocked from my view. I had a friend pick me up and I left. There are significantly more WTF moments before. Not a wedding moment as much as a bachelor party moment, but my ex got married to a woman 2 years ago from a super conservative religious family. We were still friends for the most part, and I was surprised he asked me to be a groomsman, but I figured, hey, always good to be able to stay friends with your exes. That feels like mature growth and closure. He got really drunk at the bachelor party and at one point asked me if I ever had any regrets about us breaking up. And I said I had loved him, but no, we had made the right decision in the long run. And then he told me that he sometimes wishes that we were getting married the next week, and how his fiance's family will never accept him. And then after an awkward pause, he said, "What if we just run away together?" Laughed it off as a joke and said we should rejoin the group. Then he said it again later again in a joke tone. And then a third time later in the night. We had been friends for years but only dated for like 6 months. Turns out he asked the same thing to another one of his exes who wasn't a groomsman, but was attending